It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on this chilly but not frigid Sunday afternoon, getting ready for the Bears Packers. Got my Bears shirt on here. You'll probably be listening to this when the result is already known from that game, but it is a podcast that will be Nashville centric. And I don't know if it's bookending or full circle or however you want to call it, but last night, Illinois basketball gets a much needed and ultimately very impressive win against Tennessee, especially in that second half, which we'll talk about. And then today, this Sunday afternoon, we get the confirmation that Illinois is in fact playing in the Music City Bowl against who else? Tennessee on December 30th. So for those who were at the game yesterday, guess what? You get to go and make yet another trip to Nashville, which is a fantastic city. I've only been twice, so I cannot profess to be an expert in all things Music City, but it is a great destination. It is drivable, which for my pocketbook after the Tampa and Orlando trips in the last 3 years is very much appreciated. And Illinois, ho-hum, yet again, playing a name SEC opponent and in a matchup that I think is actually not all that bad. Now, we aren't going to talk so much about the Illinois-Tennessee matchup today because we got plenty of time to preview the Music City Bowl, and we're going to be a little bit more focused on the basketball game last night. But it is interesting how these two things converge within the span of, less than 24 hours. Illinois beats Tennessee basketball at Bridgestone Arena in downtown Nashville, and then the very next day get confirmed for their own Music City Bowl appearance against the Volunteers. Now, I wanted to start with the basketball game yesterday and try to frame it without doing so hyperbolically. There's a word which is galvanizing, which means when a galvanizing win, for example, would be bringing a team together. And it is far too premature to say that something like last night is a galvanizing win. It's ultimately what comes of it that will tell us whether or not this win against Tennessee is going to have some sort of long-term impact on the team. But I do think that the way that game was kind of a tale of two halves and how you felt while watching it, a frustrating first half where you were trailing by 2 at halftime. You had no business being in that position. And then a second half where you finally just said enough and you took that game from Tennessee. I'm anxious to see as the rest of this season goes along, the ultimate impact of this Tennessee game towards building, whether you want to call it team chemistry or camaraderie, finding roles for each and every player. It seemed like by the end of yesterday's game, that team had a far better understanding of itself than they did going in. And this is not to say that Tennessee is an elite team, because I don't think they are. Offensively, they leave you wanting. But in fairness, Illinois' defense, outside of the defensive rebounding, was pretty good yesterday. So I want to focus less on the opponent, because Tennessee, let's say they have a disappointing year. They're still a tournament team. They are still a team that will finish in the top half of the SEC. And that's probably worst-case scenario for a Rick Barnes Tennessee team. But it was the way in which you dismantled them in the second half that I got to think is going to pay dividends for this team's confidence. Not that they were ever lacking it per se, but I don't think they had yet to really see everything clicking. And the key that unlocked all of that, of course, Tomislav Ivisic. And this was, going into the season, the player that we were almost excited about for good reason. There's a unique skill set that he brings to the table that nobody else does, especially at his size. And now that you got Tommy looking like Tommy again, which we had yet to see this year, it seems to be, at least from where I'm sitting, the key to unlock the rest of the season if you are to max out your potential, of which there is a great deal. Even at their lowest, the first 8-9 games of the year, even at their lowest, like the UConn game, for example, I didn't look at this Illinois team as a worse version of last year. I thought they were a better version of last year with the higher ceiling. I was just beginning to question what that ceiling was. And if it wasn't similar to previous years where you figured maybe you won one in the tournament, but that's all you can really count on. And there was a suffocating feeling to that. This sort of repetition of, I've seen that movie before, and I don't want to see the same early exit again. And yeah, you got 20 wins, and yeah, you were a top 25 caliber team, but ultimately it left you wanting. I don't know if yesterday goes to any length to dispel those concerns, because there's a long season left. But you know what it does tell me? It does remind me, at least, that there is some very good pieces on this roster, but Tomislav Ivisic is the one that is going to maximize everyone around him. The fact that he can play down low and up top and do so efficiently in both positions makes that incredibly hard on a defense. And what it also does is open things up for the other four guys on the court with him. And we saw that yesterday, especially in a second half where Tommy, I think, played 18 minutes. And the time the Big Z came in to spell him, Big Z hits your two huge threes. So it's kind of twofold for me. On one hand, I think from a mental aspect, you could look at yesterday's win against Tennessee as one that can pay dividends big time for this team. That will remain to be seen. The second parallel track, if you will, is that Tomislav Ivisic looked like Tommy, and if there is one individual takeaway from yesterday, not to say anything of Keaton Wagler, which, good God, we're going to talk about him, it's that Tommy looked like the Tommy we saw last February and March after he came back from, tonsillitis? The poor guy can't catch a break. And you looked every bit the 14th best team in the country. Tennessee did not look every bit the 13th best team in the country. But you certainly showed that when you are playing good ball as you did, skip the second half, really the last 12 minutes. When you're playing like that, you do have a very high ceiling. The question, as it is with many Brad Underwood teams, is will they be able to sustain that to a level that will get you a really good seed in the tournament and give you a better chance of making a run? And that's really, for me, the long-term view that I'm taking on this season. I'm going to ride the roller coaster. I was annoyed in the first half yesterday. We're falling all over. We're completely incapable of grabbing a rebound. We do some dumb things in the first half yesterday that just made you shake your head and say, God, I don't know half of these guys. I don't particularly like them right now. But then you saw them make play after play after play. And I do wonder, is there a contagious element to that? Is there something contagious about finally breaking yourself free from the sort of lackadaisical play through the first 8 games of the year and doing what you did against Tennessee there? Now, that was Tennessee's third loss in a row. No shame in them losing to Kansas, even though they had a lead and then blew it, I believe. No shame in Tennessee losing to Illinois. Tennessee losing at Syracuse, a not very good Syracuse team, that isn't so good. And Rick Barnes has some things to figure out with that team. They are definitely capped with their potential because of an offense that, other than Gillespie, I don't really know what you have there. But all in all, the focus for me is still on Illinois and the fact that in that environment, which was maybe not the toughest environment, more of a border war kind of, or bragging rights kind of atmosphere in Nashville, the fact that Illinois was the aggressor to the extent that they were in the last 12 minutes was so heartening. And for the first time this year, and I probably would have done it during the Texas Tech game because there were big moments in that, I had audible, yeah, because I'm watching it with a group of friends. We had this weekend trip that we do every year around this. It's the same weekend. It's the first weekend of December with the conference title games in football. And then Illinois, the last couple of years, actually the last 3, have had a game. It was at Rutgers 2 years ago when you won your first Big Ten game. It was at Northwestern last year, which that was a frustrating one. And then this one against Tennessee. So we've always had an Illinois game to watch on these weekends. And it starts at 8 o'clock Eastern because we're over around Russ Lafayette in this Airbnb. And we're all excited to watch a game, if not particularly excited about this Illinois team. And by the end of it, they actually made me feel those things that remind me why rooting for Illinois basketball, or for just any basketball team in general, can be so fun. Because when there are the big plays and the big moments, as there were with Big Z's 2 threes, as there was with the extended stretch where it seemed like you had the ball for a minute and a half straight after the under 4 timeout, and you got a couple offensive rebounds, and Tennessee just couldn't get the damn ball back. Moments that got me pumped about this team in a way I haven't probably been since the first half of that Texas Tech game and parts of the Alabama game. We've seen bits and pieces, but what we have really yet to see is a sustained half where most everything's clicking. And you got that. And even with that, did so without Andrei Stojakovic adding a whole heck of a lot. And with Brad Underwood probably still trying to figure out his rotations. So we're going to focus today's podcast mostly on basketball. A couple comments about the bowl game at the end, because we got a whole month's worth of time to talk about that, or I guess more like 3 weeks. But a huge one for Illinois. They needed it. The question, of course, is what's the follow-up, and is there any carryover from it? And we'll find out soon enough when they go to Ohio State on Tuesday, which is a game they should win. But we have seen, there's not always carryover effect depending on which Brad Underwood team we're talking about. It can be a little bit more mercurial than others. So we will talk about yesterday's big win. We'll talk about Nashville being the bowl location for Illinois this year. Another pretty big name bowl that Illinois finds themselves a part of, which speaks to, as I'm thinking about our other Big Ten, peers like a Purdue or a Michigan State and what they're going to be doing during bowl season, it ain't half bad. It really is not half bad. All right, before I get too far into this, got to remind you the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. Awesome restaurant. And this time of year, Christmas time, when you want a nice, cozy environment in which to enjoy a delicious meal, no place better than Hamilton Walkers. I believe there will be one more trip that I take with the wife to Hamilton Walkers before Christmas, because it's just the dining room and the way they deck it out and everything. It is just so utterly, I keep going back to the word cozy. And when it's cold outside, as it's going to be for the next couple weeks still, there is nothing better than a bone-in steak, medium rare, however you prefer it. A Caesar salad with that nice crisp crunch from the lettuce and those homemade croutons. Oh, and then steak fries, which are just nice and crispy. Maybe they're double fried. I don't know, but they are amazing steak fries. And usually, who am I kidding? Always an old-fashioned, maybe two if I'm feeling festive, as you would be in a month like this. So Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. Also got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. We've been working with him for a few years now, actually coming up on 5 years now that I think about it. With homeowners and auto, we get a bundle deal from State Farm, so the pricing is great. And then it's the customer service from Brian and his staff that we've always appreciated. Anytime we have a question, he gets right back to us. That is Brian Hansen, State Farm agent at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call, 217-841-4728, and join their maintenance program. No overtime or weekend fees, guaranteed same-day service. That includes a furnace check in the fall and an air conditioning check in the spring. And our system, which is about 15 years old, has been working magnificently. We got a nice toasty abode, even with this cold blast that has moved into the Midwest in the last week or two. And in the summer, the heat of summer, which we all know can be oppressive in the Midwest, our AC has just kept this house just ice cold. Love it. I like a nice air-conditioned house in the summer. You don't need to worry about that for a few more months, but you might want to join that maintenance program with Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Appreciate Luke and his staff. Luke, big Illini fan. And also the thing that they do that separates them from some other contractors is the communication piece. They are very quick at setting up, hey, here's the timeline for the project. They're quick at every step along the way, which you never know for sure if you're going to get when you hire contractors. It's just, that's the deal, but not so with owenbuildersllc.com. All right, Champagne Showers Podcast Network, appreciate them. Appreciate you, those that are tuning in on this NFL Sunday. A reminder as we get into holiday season, and I hawk my wares just for this month. I won't bug you too much about it, but we got the 200 level book right there. It is available on Amazon in hardcover, as you see here, paperback, or Kindle. What a great stocking stuffer. You got a Illini basketball fan in your life. It's a breezy read. I mean, you're getting your money's worth. It's 270 pages, 280 pages, but it's a nice thing that you can keep on your coffee table or on your nightstand and breeze through it, especially when you're feeling good about Illinois basketball. And today, aren't we feeling good? I think sometimes it is important to just reiterate where I'm at with Brad Underwood, because I've been critical and will continue to be so when the time calls for it, of Brad Underwood on this program. But I was talking with my friend Matt yesterday as the game was going on, and I kind of laid it out to him this way, because he said point blank, Brad Underwood's not a good coach. And what he meant by that was Brad Underwood brings in talent. He's a good recruiter. He's a good face of the program. But when it comes to being the coachy kind of coach, the X's and O's guy, that he's not the best at that. And that's sort of been a label that has gotten affixed to Brad Underwood. And I told Matt, hey, listen, I got questions about his coaching for sure. I talk about it all the time. And that all said, Brad Underwood legitimately heads a top 20 program. And that's an objective truth. Illinois is a top 20 program any way you slice it or dice it since his third season, which was back in 2019, 2020. So we're going to be probably getting through, as we work our way through this decade here, almost an entire decade's worth. I would assume he's got another 5 years left of a top 20 program. That's not the question. So if Brad Underwood is a good coach, and that's based on wins and losses, objectively, no argument, he is a good coach. And I would grant you very good. I'd even grant some of those that want to be generous, great. But the question we do have is, when things don't go well, how capable is he of either turning it around or making the adjustments needed? My concern after the UConn game was that I frankly didn't know where this thing was going. And it was difficult to envision what is this team at peak performance. Like, what is the makeup of this team? What can we bank on when they play tougher teams that will give them a chance in those games? Because the UConn game was, despite the margin not being the worst, a very disheartening performance, because you just didn't look like a top 20 team. Certainly not top 15. You knew the pieces were there. You know the talent's there. You know they're going to win enough games to make the tournament. That's not the question anymore, which is the bar that he has raised. The question is, what is maximum output under Brad Underwood, as we are now in year 8 of his tenure at Illinois? And I think that's a fair question, and I don't think it's unfair criticism to say that there have been games, even this year to this point, where you're watching it and you're not exactly sure, well, what is this product? And you know what's funny is the first half of the game yesterday, I felt the same way. While acknowledging the on-the-ball defense was decent, I had no real qualms with the man-to-man defense in the first half yesterday. You just couldn't grab a rebound, and you were trailing by 2, despite shooting, I'm pretty sure, over 50% against Tennessee in that defense. You knew that the score was not going to be as high because Tennessee, the way they play, the pace of play, I should say, does not lend itself to as many possessions. So it was probably going to be a first team to 70 wins. My concern was that their defense would stifle you and they'd be the ones to get to 72 or 73 points. But no, that didn't happen. It was you this time. But the first half did not leave me feeling great about where this thing was going. At halftime, we have this table set up. We're playing beer pong. Just water in the cups. We're getting old. We just have whatever beverage we want in our hand as we play with water cups. But I needed that 15 minutes to go play a couple rounds of that and get my mind off of that Illinois game for a minute and get my frustrations redirected, because my concern in the first half was, oh my God, this team doesn't rebound. They aren't tough. They're too finesse. And when you're playing tougher teams and you're a team that is predicated on scoring a lot of points, that's not a good mix. And then the second half starts, and it's fine for the first 7-8 minutes. I didn't have any huge complaints. But the last 12 were particularly impressive. And it felt like a switch was flipped. And I can't say if there was a singular moment or not, but the entire game, Tommy had been playing well. Keaton, Wagler had been playing well. But the collective unit at the 12-minute mark and to the end of the game played with an aggression and a purpose that I've yet to see this year. We saw it, I guess, early against Texas Tech. You had the big lead going into halftime. But this was in a neutral environment in your fourth big non-conference game of the year so far. One that you couldn't lose. And what I am most encouraged by is that this team refused to lose this game. And it's as if they realized with 12 minutes to go, guys, we are better than Tennessee. And that was clear as day watching this game. I'm watching Tennessee, and the frustration in being down 2 at halftime was both because you weren't rebounding the damn ball and that Tennessee, to my eyes, did not look great. Well, you didn't leave anything to chance in the last 12 minutes, and I appreciate that. Anytime a team can put their foot on the opposing team's throat, that is a very positive sign, because Illinois is going to be playing teams that are every bit as good, if not better, than Tennessee as they get into Big Ten play. And there's some bottom dwellers, too, that you will beat and you will kind of push up that win total. But to get this win is one thing. They kind of needed it. To get it in the manner in which you did is why I would understand if some people are taking a little bit more out of this. Because I'll be honest, I am a little bit myself in terms of what if this team goes on a bit of a roll here. And we look back at that 12 minutes against Tennessee as the catalyst for that. Something that the team themselves could look at and say, this is what we can do. This is what we're capable of. And that's without even Stojakovic being that effective, which I think he'll be fine, but he's in a funk right now. So a big win on many fronts. And I mentioned Tomislav Ivisic being the cornerstone of this team, and the fact that he wasn't himself up to this point in the year is a decent excuse, if you want to use one, for why you didn't beat the likes of UConn and why the Alabama game was one that you probably should have won, but you didn't. Tomislav Ivisic, when healthy and when playing well, is an extremely difficult matchup for other teams, because even if you do try to take away his shots, as they did yesterday, he still is pretty good around the rim. His size helps, but he's actually got really good touch down there too. So it wasn't like he was making a bunch of threes early. It was really going down low and taking advantage of that matchup against Ament. Is it Ament? Ament. It's one of those names where I don't know what emphasis to put on which syllable. But syllable. See, that's a joke from, I think, what is it? Austin Powers 3 or The Love Guru. Now, as I was watching that first half, the two guys I was keying on, I mentioned Tomislav Ivisic, but the other one was Keaton Wagler. And that was as complete of a 40-minute performance as you're going to get, not just from a freshman, but from a big-time guard. Keaton Wagler, from day one, has been so much fun to watch. And it's the fact that he is skilled, of course, but it's the demeanor with which he carries himself that makes him so easy to root for. Babyface killer, that one. I mean, he is a baby-faced killer. And to see him against a stifling defense not get flustered and not turn the ball over and get more and more ball handling duties, I think speaks to the fact that this kid, we can look at the freshman label, which is accurate to his age, but that is the only freshman thing about him. I just feel like we're watching someone in Keaton Wagler that if we were an older era of college basketball, would have the potential to be one of the greatest Illini ever. And I know that sounds like, whoa, that's a little bit strong. But when you consider, go back to some of the previous greats. I'll go back to Frank Williams, who his freshman year was productive, but inefficient. There were games where Frank would drive you nuts. He was a mercurial player, even all the way through his junior year, but most observedly in his freshman year, because he was a freshman. Granted, it was his second year in the program because the first one he had to sit out for academics. But I'm watching Keaton Wagler here and thinking, God, if we got 3 years with this guy, he would, at this rate, be one that would vault up pretty far up the Illini charts in terms of, all-timers. And I was thinking about what Illini players, like what is it about Keaton Wagler that would make me think that would make me draw that comparison to previous Illini players that we've loved. And whether it be a Frank Williams or back in the 89 team, a Nick Anderson or Kenny Battle, more so than a Kendall Gill, who was awesome and had as good an NBA career as any of them. But it was the Nick Andersons and Kenny Battles that seemed to embody that team. I mentioned Frank. I'll go back to a Kawan Garris, just the steadying presence. you really look to him because no matter what the moment was, it was never too big for him or Frank or the examples from the final Illini team, or even a Darren Williams, who in that Final Four team in 04-05, D was the show. Like, he was the master of ceremonies, but Darren Williams was the thing that made that engine purr. And I'm watching this Keaton Wagler kid. Well, here's another cliche: the straw that stirs the drink, or whatever you want to say. This evaluation from Brad Underwood might end up being his best yet. It's not like Keaton Wagler wasn't recruited, but the way he's playing, he should have been one of the most highly sought after players in the nation. You must have got in early. I don't really recall the whole circumstances with the recruitment, but I would imagine you got in early enough. You made the pitch. And Bill Self probably regrets it considerably. Losing the player of the year in Kansas and not really even recruiting him. And for what? I would understand if in person or on tape he didn't pop off, because Keaton Wagler doesn't play in such a way that he pops off the screen. But I think that makes him even more impressive, that he's doing this so consistently and no signs of being flustered in any way, shape, or form. And then you look at the box score and ho-hum, he's got 15 points and 6 assists and blah, blah, blah. I need to go check the line for him yesterday, but there was one stat that Jeremy brought up in their podcast from yesterday. And this really just blew my mind. The stat was Illinois played 9 games. Keaton Wagler, who is ball handling more and more, spelling Colin Boswell, but also being a good ball handler himself, has turned the ball over in 9 games total 10 times. 10. This is a freshman playing almost 30 minutes a game, has the ball in his hands a bunch, drives it to the hoop, facilitates for his teammates, 10 turnovers in 9 games. That would be an unfathomable stat for even the best of point guards. He's special, or so it appears, and I'm hoping, not as any sort of slight towards him, because he should go to the NBA when the time suits him. And I think he will be an NBA player because he's got the height, he's got the skill. But for selfish reasons, I don't want him to go after this year. And he's only beginning to emerge on draft boards. And if he continues to play like this, he will be in those conversations. Probably more as a back end of the first round guy, so not a guarantee by any stretch. But do whatever you got to do to bring him back. Because as a fan, I want to be able to watch him again in an Illinois uniform. I want him to be the key piece for next year's team, assuming that Tommy won't be back, and obviously Kylan and Andrei Stojakovic will be gone. You tell me that you can build the team around Keaton Wagler, I think it's a pretty damn good start. And I already know that Illinois is going to be a good team if he is that dude. So what a pleasure to watch Keaton Wagler. I just really enjoy the cut of that kid's jib. Love the cut of his jib. And, you know, I was talking about the comparisons to previous Illini players, and not so much from the actual skill set or what he does in the court. I'm just thinking that there's something about Illini, our favorite players, right? Something that they embody that Illinois fans really latch on to. And I'll even go back to my dad talking about Ephraim Winters. And Ephraim Winters was just kind of a lunch pail, to borrow that cliche that I know Sharon Moore, I think, used when he wore the hard hat or the construction gear or whatever he did to a press conference. Yeah, you know, Ephraim Winters was a lunch pail to work kind of guy. And he got the rebounds and he got the garbage buckets. And he had great dunks, no doubt, from what I understand. But personality-wise was very matter of fact. This is my job. I'm here to do this job and do it well. And Keaton Wagler just seems to have that as well. There's nothing in the way of histrionics or him being overly animated. He's really just, how to put this? I am completely calm when the ball is in his hands. Because I feel like, 1, he's not going to mess up. 2, I know he's capable of going to make plays. And 3, I think, to use that word contagious, which I've used before about those last 12 minutes and it being contagious to get a win like that, is it not contagious to have the guy running the show from the backcourt be as cool, calm, and collected as he is, And by extension, Colin Boswell, who's a senior. The fact that these two guys will be able to play off each other for the rest of the year and continue to build that chemistry, trading off who's off the ball and who is running point. I think it is fair to say that by the end of the season, they'll have even more of a connection than they do right now, which I think bodes well for this Illinois team if you can slot those two guys in for 30 minutes a game at the 1 and 2. There are concerns with your depth at guard. So thank goodness Brad Underwood found Keaton Wagler, because I remember going into the offseason thinking, I like the collection of guys he brought in. I'm just not sure what your 2 or 3 deep is at shooting guard or point guard. And it's working out pretty darn well, mostly because Keaton Wagler was not even a diamond in the rough, but just an amazing evaluation by the staff. So that is kudos to them. Had to give props to Keaton Wagler. Last night I want to be sure I'm accurate with this stat sheet here, but yeah, I mean, this is just amazing. Keaton played 34 minutes, second most on the team. Colin Boswell played 36, despite that stinger it appeared on his shoulder. 16 points, 5 of 13 shooting. In fairness to Wagler, I think 2 of those shots were forces at the end of a shot clock. Made his 2 free throws, 4 for 11 from 3. So again, 4 for 9 if you throw out those garbage ones that he had to chuck up there. But the second most minutes on the team for your freshman shooting guard. And he looked like the best guard on the court yesterday. I mean, Gillespie got his, in fairness, but he did so 6 for 20 from the field. If Keaton Wagler shoots 20 times yesterday, he's finishing with 27, 28 points if you extrapolate that, what he got with 11 shot attempts. Other guys yesterday, Colin Boswell, he's steady. And he finishes with 15 points, 6 of 11 shooting. He had some great takes to the rim. There was one in particular in that closing stretch that was just awesome, how he snaked in there, got a bucket. You want some of those free throws back. It was a little bit uncanny to see him go 3 for 6 from the line, something Illinois could have done better down the stretch. But, you feel good about your point guard and your shooting guard. And I didn't know what the shooting guard situation would look like this year. Tomislav Ivisic looked like himself. So you feel really good at the 5 because Big Z playing a supporting role instead of a starring role. I think you will take that. Big Z, by the way, finishes with 9 minutes compared to Tommy's 31. So they did combine for 40. I don't know if they were ever on the court at the same time. And Big Z, of course, hits 2 massive threes. 2 massive threes at the most important part of the game with 5 minutes to go or so. Really gives you some breathing room and allows you to settle in. Andrei Stojakovic, I don't know where his head's at right now. 21 minutes. He is getting benched for some of these mistakes that he's making. I thought it was a solid game from David Mirkovic. I didn't love the flop because he did not get elbowed in the face, and I'm thinking, what is this, FIFA? Listen, I think soccer is a really cool sport, but one part of it that is very annoying is when players flop like, when they only got brushed. So that was a little bit of a Euro move. I'm not some mean potatoes American guy saying, get these Europeans out of here. I'm not that. I love these European players because they bring so much. And they also have been great post-game interviews too. They got personalities, and I like what they've infused in this program. But that right there was such a soccer move that it was hard not to roll one's eyes and say, oh my God, Merck, you would have been fine just flopping a little bit. You didn't need to put that much extra sauce on it. I was worried he was going to get a technical for flopping. Or I guess it'd be a flop warning at that point, but it was a little much. Jake Davis hit the 1-3 he took. That was a good shot from him. I believe that was in the second half as well. Mihailo Petrovic, I'm not really sure what you're getting from that. And that's okay. If you got Boswell and Wagler playing at the level they're at, you don't really need him for more than spot minutes to run the point, and then maybe he'll get you a couple buckets, or he will create because he does find a way to sneak to the rim easily. He's just not finishing. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Ben Humrickhouse. I would be remiss to not credit him for a really awesome game despite not scoring from the field. As we're watching it last night, it appears to me like every defensive possession for a stretch in the second half, he had his hands on it. There was one bad possession where he got the stop or helped get the stop, but was not able to get around for the offensive rebound. And whether that was in the first half, one of the myriad of offensive rebounds the Tennessee got, or early in the second, that was the only time that Ben Rickhouse did something on defense that made me go, huh. And I think that's pretty good for a guy that ended up playing out, I think, 27 minutes. I understand right now why he has the trust of Brad Underwood. I want him to make more shots. He did not attempt one from the field yesterday. But I got to use this from Trevor or Isaac in our chat thread. One of them said this. So Trevor or Isaac, I'll give credit to both because you both have great takes. But one of them said, what if he's our DeMonte? What if Benham Rickhouse is our 6'9" DeMonte Williams? And doesn't it seem like that's what he's kind of become? Now, DeMonte started. And depending on the matchup, end of game situation, you might have him out there, you might not. I guess more often than not, DeMonte was out there, at least in the closing minutes, because you needed that defender. You needed that steady hand. And I was talking about Keaton Wagler being that on offense. It is crazy to say this after last year and all the struggles that Benham Rickhouse had defensively. But does it feel like he is the steadying hand on defense? Benham Rickhouse. He flashed in a way that a guy that only scored 2 points, and those just being 2 free throws, he flashed in a way that guys at that stat line don't usually flash. So credit to him. He could have went somewhere else to be ensured a starting role. I know it wasn't a great year for him last year, but he had enough numbers to demote himself effectively or relegate himself to a smaller school to get a more pronounced role, and he stuck it out. Yeah, he's getting some money, so it's not like he's not getting compensated for it, but I doubt he's getting as much as last year. And he's not getting the starting role like he did last year. And it doesn't matter. He's going out there and playing harder and playing smart. I can't hate on Benham Rickhouse for what he's done this year. Make more shots, yes. And he's got to continue to take them when they're open. In the flow of the offense yesterday, I guess they just weren't there for him. But, man, kudos to him. That is a very easy guy to root for when you see all the struggles from the year before, all the criticism that was levied towards him, and then he gets better, bigger and stronger, tougher. All of those cliches you want to throw out, he's actually doing those things and becoming a very important player on this team. I don't dread when Benham Rickhouse is out there anymore. I would if he shot 8 threes a game, and that's why the Alabama game was frustrating because he did make a couple at the end. But it's like, if you just would have made 1 or 2 earlier, but I think he is finding his role. I think the offense is finding out that you don't need to feed him a bunch of threes. And he's also himself finding that he can do more than just shoot on offense. So that's very encouraging. So big win. They needed that in the worst way. They got it. And that is a major credit to this team, especially within the course of the game when things did not look good. And not only did they pull themselves out of that, but they actually put together just a 12-minute stretch where it was very, very impressive basketball. So kudos to them. Much needed win and infused some life into me as a fan, to be quite honest. It really did. And this is a big week ahead. I like that there's not too much of a break between the next game. Go to Ohio State, get the win. You should. You just frankly should get that win. And then come home and beat Nebraska. And then you have, I think, 9 days off before you play Missouri. Illinois, after that game yesterday, jumped up a few spots in KenPom. They find themselves at number 12. The defense in particular took a jump. It's up to 17. Offense is still top 10 in the nation, so number 12 for Illinois. Just for comparison's sake, Michigan State is number 11 on KenPom. Number 1 is Michigan. Purdue falls all the way down to 6. I don't know. And Iowa State, by the way, moves up to number 2 on KenPom, and they're going to take a big old jump in that AP Top 25 tomorrow. But, we were in the West Lafayette area, and I drove into town because the country roads were still a bit snow-covered. So I drove into town. I'd never seen that campus before, and I run starting at noon Eastern, which is when the game started. And I run by Mackey, I run by Ross-Ade Stadium, and the campus is fine. I got to say it was rather unremarkable. It was nothing really stood out to me. It was pretty enough, but it's not, let's say, Michigan State, which I do think is a gorgeous campus. Iowa, I think, is a great campus. Illinois has a very good campus. This one, I don't know. Maybe it was because I was there when all the people were in Mackey Arena, but I digress. Purdue looked bad, but Iowa State looked godly. So I think Purdue's going to be just fine. I view the Big Ten thusly. Michigan right now is the team to beat because every metric shows they are the best team in the country. Hooray, isn't that fun? And then Purdue is second best. I think those are your 1 and 2, and I don't think there's much conversation about that. Michigan State and Illinois would be kind of in that next group. And by the way, you would have to go all the way down to 22, which is where Wisconsin is, to find the next Big Ten team in KenPom. It's a considerable jump. Iowa, sneaky, 25th in KenPom. But I view the Big Ten as a conference that could get 4 teams in the top 12 of NCAA seedings, meaning a 1, 2, or 3. And my question for this Illinois team is, can they do what they need to ensure a 3 seed in the tournament? That tells you what Brad Underwood has done to raise this program. And again, I got questions about a few things that Brad Underwood does or does not do, but I do not question the fact that they're going to make tournaments. So I'm not going to take that for granted. I think that the fact we can have a conversation of, well, how can they get to a 3 seed speaks to where you're at. If Michigan State and Illinois do what each of them are capable of, I do think that those are teams that will probably end up with like 3 seeds in the NCAA tournament. You got Wisconsin, looks to me like a 5 or a 6. And look, we're already doing bracketology, and it's December 7th. You got Indiana there at 28, but I don't know, man. I don't know how good they are. Texas Tech, by the way, fall into 30. Tennessee is 18 in KenPom, so we will be rooting for those teams as the year goes on. UCLA at 31, Ohio State at 32. They're fine. Ohio State has not played anyone worth a lick this year, but they are capable offensively. But you should win. I'm not going to, and I'm not one that does super in-depth analysis of every game, but it does seem to me like Ohio State, after what you did Saturday, going on the road, staying on the road, I should say, I don't think is a bad thing for this team. It's a business trip. You've already started to get that mojo working a little bit. Going to Columbus, which is always a dead environment, and just beat them. That's it. Other opponents coming up, Missouri sits there at 43rd in KenPom. That will not be an easy game, and rarely is that game a blowout. But I do think you will probably be favored by, I don't know, 6, 7 points. There you go, kids. Nebraska at 48, and that's who you play Saturday. So coming up, you got 31 on KenPom, Ohio State. You have 48 Nebraska at home, and you have 43rd ranked on KenPom, Missouri in bragging rights. You should go 3-0. That will get you to 10-2. And that's a pretty darn good way to wrap up things before Christmas. With your 2 losses, too, by the way. Connecticut, which is 7th in KenPom, and Alabama, which is 15th. And I really hate losing that game. I'm sorry. I hate it. But it's not gonna hurt you. So that's the good news with that. It just would have helped. Oh. Got a couple things in the comments section here. St. Dom, I don't trust Brad. We can win this game and lose to Ohio State or Missouri or both. And St. Dom, that is fair. And of course they can. I am not going to fault you for not trusting Brad. I don't know what my level of trust in Brad is as someone that will have them ready to go kick butt again Tuesday. I don't know if Brad's strength necessarily is the mental component of the game. I think if you ask me, what is Brad Underwood best at? I think it is accruing talent is number 1. And 2, I would say, is sort of macro strategy. And what I mean by that is offensively, this is now the 3rd or 4th year running where you have a great offense. We've also seen years, and it wasn't last year, and it wasn't the Elite 8 team even, that had defenses that were ranked very highly too. So I think he often is pretty good at identifying this is an offense or a defense that'll work best with this team. The defense, that lefty won in the last 2 years, that was a major indictment of a lack of adjustments. But for the most part, I think his two biggest strengths, St. Dom, are getting talent in here and macro strategy adjustments, like from season to season. That sort of flexibility has worked in his favor in a way that a lot of teams in the portal era are not, where you do see dips more than what Brad Underwood experienced with the Matthew Meyer year or even last year. All right, from D.A. Feld. Consistent post play and guards aggressively getting into the paint will unlock our three-point shooting. This team has the formula now. I like that. I think we saw that, especially the last 12 minutes of the game. And to that point, it went from aesthetically unpleasing basketball to aesthetically pleasing because of that aggression. And sure enough, it did open up three-pointers and good looks, in rhythm looks. So I like it. I think you can be a three-point shooting team, but still maintain that aggression towards the post. The first option should always be a layup. This team has guys that can go get that. We also have big men that can make shots in the paint. Those should be the first options. And if you do that with enough efficiency, then it will open up three-pointers. And if they just make enough of them, and that's what they did yesterday. I mean, I'm looking at this box score here. Three-pointers for Illinois on the higher end of 30%. They shot 11 of 28. 39% from three is going to do it most of the time. You know what? 35% will do it most of the time. We are not asking for 40+%. That is pretty much unreasonable to ask of a college basketball team. But I think they can hit mid-30s. And on the nights in which they do, it'll be hard for me to envision them losing. 2-pointers for Illinois. Well, let's just keep it this way. They shot 48% from the field. If it was 39% from three, that means, okay, that looks like they were 17 of 30 from two. So over 50% from two. 8 of 14 from free throws. You could have done better there, but man, Tennessee, 8 of 18. Yikes. I know their bigs got a lot of those free throws, but and you won this game by 13 despite a minus 15 rebound differential. Now, that means they out-rebounded you only by 1 in the second half. And this is going to be a much tougher game to rebound in than probably anyone other than UConn. And it was frustrating. Nothing better than getting tape that you can use to improve yourselves after a win. But if you continue to see the inability to corral rebounds or loose balls, then yeah, you should be concerned because that will get you against a team that actually, unlike Tennessee, makes their damn shots. Tennessee, because of all these second chance opportunities, had 7 more shot attempts than you did, and they made 4 less shots total. 37% from the field. Not a good offensive team. But again, for every bad offensive showing, there's at least some credit to the defense, and I did think Illinois' defense looked all right yesterday. I really do. So there's some encouraging things yesterday beyond just the possibility that this could galvanize the team and really help them kind of figure out what is my role, where do I fit in this team as they build that chemistry through the month of December. Not many games in December and plenty of practice time, which hopefully sets you up for the gauntlet in January, February, and March. From Steven. Speaking of time off, Steven says the extra time off really helped Illinois yesterday. It was good to see them run slip screens to the basket. The quick turnaround for Ohio State could pose a problem. If it were Monday, like let's say it was a Sunday afternoon game against Tennessee and then you played them on Tuesday, which is unrealistic, I understand. But I'd be, excuse me, long weekend, guys. I'd be a little bit more concerned. But I do think this is enough of a turnaround. You're already on the road. I doubt, did they even come home? I do wonder that. I would imagine they just went straight to Columbus because it would seem kind of like one trip too many. I don't know, get there early, get settled. That's one extra night in a hotel because you'd be staying there Monday anyway. So I don't know. I understand the concern. I think this team could also very well come out and win by like 12 at Ohio State. They should win. And I'm not going to hold them to any lower standard than that. They wouldn't. So I'm just kind of going with what they probably think themselves, the coaching staff. But no, we're going to go into Ohio State. We're going to beat them. Why? Because we're better than them. You just are. So, yeah, that's next. I kind of like, Stephen, that we don't have to wait too long. Would Wednesday night have been more preferable? Yes. I do like a little bit of time between Ohio State and Nebraska. This team, for whatever reason, man, I hate Saturday day games for this team. I'm pretty sure that's what it is against Nebraska. Yeah, 3 o'clock on Saturday. At least it's not 11 a.m. or 12. I've had bad moments at the State Farm Center watching this team in early Saturday games. 3 o'clock isn't that early, but I don't mind a little bit of space before that. All right, before we get out of here, just a quick bow on the Music City Bowl. Illinois, Tennessee, I'll look more into what Tennessee did or did not do this year. Really solid job by Josh Heupel, their coach there. And my brother-in-law is actually an Illinois and Tennessee fan because he grew up here but spent much of his middle and high school years and then his early adult life in Memphis. So a Vols fan, really because of Peyton Manning. That was a formative time for him as a sports fan. And, you know, Tennessee is not a powerhouse per se, but that's a brand in football. And when you can fill 110,000 people, or 100, I guess, in Neyland Stadium on the river for every single game, and now they feel like they actually have a coach that could be the long-term guy for him. You know, that this is a tough game. There was a rumor earlier today it was going to be LSU, and that fell through, and I would have loved that because you would have caught a team that has major brand name recognition, and they're in between coaches, and how engaged would they have been? Tennessee is going to be engaged. Illinois is going to be the underdog, probably by 6.5 points. 6.5, 7.5 points. I don't think it'll be as expansive as it was against South Carolina last year. The good news is this. If you beat Tennessee, it's huge. If you lose in a competitive game, 8-5 doesn't look as good as 9-4, but, you know, whatever. Here's what I've learned from bowl games. I've been to the last two in Tampa and Orlando, and I was, of course, bummed at the end of the ReliaQuest Bowl. And then about 30 minutes later, it's fine. I'm in Tampa. I'm in Florida. This is great. We made a bowl game. The season did kind of sputter towards the end there, but winning would have been a cherry on top. Now, the Citrus Bowl was amazing. Duh. I mean, that's self-explanatory, but I don't need them to win this game, but I would imagine that you're still going to have most of your guys go, including Luke. I think what you can do in the NIL era is throw a little cash bonus to certain players if you need to incentivize them to take that risk of playing. That's totally fine. But I am excited to be in Nashville, which will be probably 2 Tennessee fans for every 1 Illinois fan, because that's just the geographic reality of it. But Illinois fans will travel. And it'll be an outdoor football game in very late December, so it'll be chilly, I'm sure. And what the hell? You know, go out there and maybe you get a win and play inspired ball. And, you know, both of these bowl games against SEC teams were close games. One of them went your way. One of them did not. I have no reason to believe this game would not be close either. So, yeah, would I have preferred LSU for just your chances of winning? Yeah, I would have. But I'll take this. And I think it'll be a more engaged Tennessee fan base than it would be LSU, who's just kind of waiting for Lane to get down there. And it makes sense for Music City if they had the choice to choose Tennessee instead of LSU. So I'm excited for it. And I'm glad that Illinois got that invite. We got, I think, a nice little contingent going down there. And Nashville's so easy to get to and just a great city. And hotels really not expensive. I mean, I think about had they been Vegas Bowl invites, then I would have had a decision to make because I enjoyed this season as one should an 8-4 season, but would I have traveled? My wife asked me this question. Would you have traveled to Vegas for this team? And I said, that's a good point. And, you know, one last point I was thinking of, because I know I came on here after the Wisconsin game. I was like, oh, man, I'm not going to the Northwestern game. Listen, guys, I ride the roller coaster. I am an irrational fool sometimes. But I was pissed after the Wisconsin game, and it still doesn't make any sense to me why that happened. But if I were to think, why have I all of a sudden been like, hey, Music City Bowl, snow game? I mean, that snow had this, like, purifying effect. You got the win, of course. If you would have lost, that would have been really bad, and then you're in the Pinstripe Bowl in all likelihood. But no, you won the snow game. We got purified the waters of Lake Minnetonka, the football snow equivalent of that. And now we get a good bowl game against a good opponent. All eyes will be on you on December 30th at 4:30 Central. It's a great time in the middle of the holiday season for people that are already off work anyways and just, you know, still in that sort of post-Christmas alcohol and food stupor. And Broadway in Nashville will be just full of orange. Some that weird kind of creamsicle orange of Tennessee and others in that garish, obnoxious orange that we have. And it's going to be awesome to see those oranges clash. But I think ultimately a good-natured trip. I mean, we'll see. LSU fans would have been just obnoxious assholes. That's what they're kind of known for. Their freaking governor gets involved in their coaches' searches. So what would you expect from a state that is that weird and culty about freaking football? Last thing, though. Indiana, what a game last night. I mean, it was a terrific title game. I know it was low scoring, but it was never boring. And Curt Cignetti is the greatest coach I have ever seen. And that is, I don't think, hyperbolic when you consider what he inherited. Yes, he's gotten transfers. But there's enough guys on the Indiana team that were there 2 years ago when John Paddock lit them up for 560 yards. And Illinois won in overtime? Is that right? So it's the greatest coaching thing I've ever seen. Indiana very well may win a national title in football. Am I a little jealous? Of course. I mean, that does stink. Why not us? I also am realistic enough to not look at Bret Bielema and say, well, why aren't you doing this, Bret? Why aren't you doing the greatest coaching job in the history of college football as well? Bret's done a really good job. To compare anybody to Curt Cignetti is unfair to that person. That's how good Cignetti is. That's the kind of amazing job he's done. All you can do is just say, dude, congrats. Kudos to you. There is no questioning how good Curt Cignetti is as a coach and how good that program is now. They are a powerhouse in 2 years flat, and I think they will win the national title. Georgia is going to be the bugaboo. And very well, you might have Ohio State play Indiana again, which, by the way, Ryan Day, why in the hell, 4th and 1, 3 minutes to go, are you kicking a field goal? With your big uglies up front, get the yard and put the game away right then and there and let your defense stop Indiana. I don't know. Ryan Day went back to his old conservative Ryan Day self, and it just seemed counter to what he's done since the last playoff run. I did not understand that then, and then the kicker misses a gimme, which, of course, no one anticipated that. But just going for the tie there, like, worst case, they stop you on 4th and 1, 3 minutes to go. You put your vaunted defense back out there, and you pin them deep. I know it's a risk. I get it. It just seemed really weak. And, of course, the kicker could have just made it. But I wouldn't have questioned Indiana going right back down and getting 3 themselves, because that's Curt Cignetti and what this team does. So kudos to them. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here, but we will be back Tuesday night for a second half pod. The question is, what time is that game? 6:30. Okay, so we'll be here about 7:30, a little bit after that for the Ohio State second half. Get that W. They should. It'd be frustrating if they didn't, but no, I think they will. Before we get out of here, Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits, right in the heart of downtown Champaign. A great place for any time of year, but especially during the holiday season. That's Hamilton Walkers. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. For life, auto, home, business renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728 and join their maintenance program. No overtime or weekend fees and guaranteed same-day service. And finally, Owen Builders LLC. I'm on owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Thank you all for tuning in on this football Sunday. About to go watch the Bears, and hopefully they can get a win at Lambeau, which would be unbelievable. I wouldn't hold anything past this Ben Johnson coach team. All they really got to do is split these games against the Packers. I think they'll do that. Oh, if they won today. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. But in the meantime, everybody, have a good first couple days of the week. We will see you Tuesday evening for a second half podcast when Illinois visits Ohio State. It is the 200 level.